News Central now at this hour begins in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where some members of the House of Representatives have initiated a review of existing legislation pertaining to persons with disabilities to better reflect their current needs. And speaking at the Nigeria Accelerates Disability Inclusion in Emergency Forum in Abuja, the lawmakers emphasized the importance of enabling full participation of persons with disabilities in social and political spheres across the country. They also committed to aligning the Persons with Disabilities Act with international standards and addressing the specific challenges. Stakeholders in Nigeria have expressed concerns over the need for government to provide a national minimum wage that will reflect the economic reality of the country. And this was during a retreat for members of parliament in Abuja, where they urged lawmakers to have a thorough grasp of the issue so they can intervene by passing adequate legislation that will ensure the minimum wage is approved and is truly a living wage for Nigerian workers. Our correspondent, Joseph, tells us more.
Nigeria's industrial sector has been characterized by disputes such as strike in the last few years, which have impacted negatively on productivity and the nation's development. This situation has been compounded by recent economic downturn, which has affected workers' welfare and raised the standards of living. While organized labor has called for a review of wages of workers, the Tripartite Negotiation Committee of the federal government says it has submitted its report on the minimum wage review and called on the parliament to have a proper understanding of the issues on ground before enacting a law on the nation's minimum wage.
By this seminar, we therefore equip members of the committees and other stakeholders here present to share experience that culminate into a robust legislative intervention.
While expressing concerns about the challenges facing Nigerian workers, the president of the Trade Union Congress urged lawmakers to live up to expectations and put in place adequate legislation that will reflect current economic realities.
More than 30,000 naira to buy in 2019, you are going to need over 100,000 naira to buy it today, or even much more.
The chairman of the Tripartite Committee on the National Minimum Wage shared some recommendations. Also, Nigeria's Minister of State for Labour urged lawmakers to enact legislation that will ensure that offenders of labour law are punished.
We need to review the national manpower development towards having graduates from our tertiary institutions that are employable.
If people are not brought to book for violating our laws will just be a mere piece of paper.
The leadership of the National Assembly affirmed their commitment toward better welfare for workers and called for joint efforts to ensure fair labour relations.
Let our great workers be rest assured that the National Assembly stands side by side with the Nigerian people.
Stakeholders say they are confident that the outcome of the retreat will help boost effective labour legislation, especially regarding the issue of a minimum wage. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joseph.
The Nigerian government has suspended duties, tariffs and taxes on essential food items imported through land and sea borders for 150 days. And this announcement was made by the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abba, at a press briefing in Abuja on Monday. The duty-free import window includes maize, wheat, husked brown rice and cowpeas as part of the Presidential Accelerated Stabilization and Advancement Plan to achieve food security and economic stability. Kyari emphasized government's commitment to addressing the food inflation crisis and ensuring no citizens goes hungry. The government also will import 250,000 metric tons each of wheat and maize to support small-scale processors. The federal government has also inaugurated the Renewed Hope National Livestock Transformation Implementation Committee to prioritize livestock development. And to unpack this, I am joined by Temitokwe Kolade, Senior Manager and Lead, ESG and Climate Change Services at Anderson. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let me start by asking what your thoughts are. Do you think this measure is the step in the right direction to ensure we, get to the point of food security in Nigeria?
Apparently, we are in a very critical state in Nigeria where food inflation has jumped by. I mean, if you look at the National Bureau of Statistics figures, you will think that inflation rate is just about 30%, so to speak. But in reality, inflation rate has been eating the roofs, and the price of items in the market has had about 3 times multiplication or multiple orders in the last couple of months. And it's one step that needs to be taken in the medium term, I would say, or at the best, the short term. And apparently, when you look at that policy from the government, they've said it's just for 150 days, right? So it's a 150-day window. So I think they're also aware that it's a short-term fix, right? It's not something that is sustainable in itself, but it's a step in the right direction in the short term, I would say.
So in the long term, what will have been the more sustainable measure in fixing food insecurity in Nigeria? Like you rightly, referenced, we have food inflation according to NBS, as at May 2024, hitting 41%. So what would have been a holistic measure in tackling food crisis or food insecurity in Nigeria?
Apparently, we have to go to the root of the matter. And so the question would be why farmers are not able to farm anymore. Apparently, why do we have increased cost of inputs into the farm as well? Inflation rate is impacting on the cost of inputs, farm implements, for instance. Those who do mechanized farming will tell you that the cost of diesel is also over the roof, and it's impacting on how much they are able to get tractors on the farm to do some work for them. So some farmers are not able to go to farm anymore. Coupled with that is the insecurity issues that we have in the major parts of the north and even theft down south. Right, so some of the herding activity also destroying farm activities and flooding. So is a bundle of issues that needs to be unpacked really. But I think that the Ministry of Agriculture has its work cut out for it. The federal government has a work cut out for it. The first step would be to, in my own thoughts, deal with the security issues that we have, restore confidence in people who really want to farm, and get the young people to go to farm, because for all you care, the young people just want white collar jobs. They don't want to go to farm, whereas they have a greater strength and they can do smart agriculture much more than farming in the old ways where it's just subsistence and not commercial.
But then, I mean, how much of impact do you see this policy or measure having on domestic production of maize, wheat, rice, and even beans? How much of impact?
Well, I would say that I'm not expecting so much from this. In terms of the cost in the market, maybe it would help to manage the cost and bring it down a bit. But we also want to imagine how it will impact on farmers, local farmers, for instance. If you have your products in the market, there has to be some sort of equilibrium. If you're getting imports and then you're also producing locally, which is why some people are also concerned about the recent debates around GMOs, where you're able to get more products, you're able to get more yield from your market. So the concern would really be, if you continue to farm the old way, how much of the yield would you have, and would you be as profitable as someone who would maybe get it from a place where they're able to get greater yield, and then it's the cost per unit becomes smaller and more dealable for them. So yes, there would be impacts here and there, but I don't see the impacts being so drastic, in at least in the short term.
How about for the local farmers? Do you think this might, discourage them or even cause a spike in imports?
A spike in imports, yes, maybe some people want to import more if the cost of getting those items locally are, way over the roof. And that's what we've seen for materials like clothing, for instance, shoes. You would find that sometimes even when you want to patronize locally made shoes from leathers in the markets, it's the cost of production is higher. So it's really finding that equilibrium between the cost of production locally and the cost of imports. Like I said earlier, if you're going to be importing from a place where they got greater yield by doing very little because they did mechanized farming, they also add some great inputs into the farm that gave them a bumper harvest, right? It would mean that it's coming at a reasonable minimal cost compared to what is being produced locally. So should the farmer stop? I would say no. What they need to do is to ensure that they go to farm more smarter so that they can have better yield in Nigeria as well. Maybe some will be discouraged if they always use the traditional ways of farming, but they have to up their games. But they also have to think about the fact that we cannot continue as a country to import for the long term. So it's not a sustainable measure. So they shouldn't really go out of the farms.
Now, there are criticisms as to how workable this policy is. Yes, the policy introduces recommended retail price for imported food items, but then critics are saying, how feasible is it for the government to enforce this price nationwide?
Well, if you ask me, I would have to ask the government how they're going to implement that recommended retail price. But I think the phrase gives it up already, saying that it's recommended, right? To the extent that we do not have regulated markets for food, it would really be difficult to say that someone has imported an item for a particular price and he cannot make a decent gain on it, right? There could be some members of the FCP, for instance, Consumer Protection FCP, going around to ensure that they enforce some sort of compliance with the recommended price, but how far would they be able to go again? Because it's supposed to be a free market, and how much of regulation can be done in that regard. So at the best is a recommended price, and I will think that the market forces would have to play their roles to ensure that we have the right pricing for whatever item that is imported. Other than the 250,000 metric tons that will be imported by the government itself, that it could have direct control over the price that it gets to the consumers, I will think that at the best is a recommendation from the government to other marketers, private people.
Well, thank you so much for your expertise, Temitope Kolade, Senior Manager and Lead ESG and Climate Change Services at Anderson. Many thanks indeed for your insights.
Thanks for having me.
Stakeholders in Abuja will take that news after this break. Stay with us. Staying tuned. Stakeholders in Abuja have identified gender exclusion as one of the major factors causing multidimensional poverty in the country. And while they agree that new ways and models must be devised to break the cycle of poverty, some of them spoke to newsmen in Abuja saying they have agreed to converge on the Gender and Inclusion Summit that will address poverty head-on. Our correspondent, Amadine Uyi, tells us more.
Poverty and inequality has been identified as a major problem in Africa, affecting many homes, and Nigeria is not left out.
We make the mistake that poverty is generic. It's not. How people experience poverty has a sequence.
Globally, about 1.3 billion people, or 21.7%, live in acute multidimensional poverty. And over half, 644 million, are children under the age of 18. Nearly 85% of persons living with multidimensional poverty are either in sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia.
Stakeholders say while there is a need to devise methods and ways to reduce poverty affecting citizens, available data reveal that exclusion of women and persons with disability play a crucial role.
We understand and we know that beyond conventional monetary poverty measures, we need to look at what sort of acute deprivations are happening in health, in education, in living standards. What is the big picture And we want to provide a comprehensive understanding of the picture of who is poor and what sort of dimensions of poverty we should be reflecting on.
Poverty has a character. You see the character of the poverty in that northern town. This child, because she's a girl, has been given a set of girl chores. Fetch water. Fetch water because it is one of those areas where her community is deprived, has created school poverty or education poverty.
They say stakeholders have agreed to converge for an upcoming summit, also known as GS24 Summit, that will engage factors that promote gender-inclusive poverty and come up with new methods to break the cycle of poverty in many homes across the nation.
Gender equality and inclusion are essential for sustainable development, and the GS24 will explore every gender-inclusive pathway to poverty reduction by addressing health, education, and living standard, and highlighting strategic partnership to advance these efforts.
We hope that at the end of this summit, we will at least have new policy proposals, new inclusion social design frameworks, more reimagined ideas that challenge our nation, our policymakers, our business leaders to deliver a new type of model.
The summit will also seek for ways to improve gender inclusion, empower women in business, and deliberate on eradicating factors which keeps girls out of school. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
The Nigerian Bar Association says Nigeria does not recognize same-sex marriage following the controversy that recently surrounded the Samoa agreement. A statement signed by NBA President Yakubu Mekiyo said, contrary to widespread belief raging across the country, there was no provision in the agreement which requires Nigeria to accept LGBTQ or gay rights as a precondition for a loan of $150 billion. Mekiyo also called on the government to continue with the public enlightenment already been undertaken and for other stakeholders to join in doing so to counter the negative perception being promoted on the agreement. Meanwhile, Kano State Governor Abba Yusuf has directed the Hisbah Board to crack down on groups suspected to be promoting and advocating for LGBTQ rights in Kano State. The directive comes amid rising tension over the activities of groups allegedly promoting same-sex marriage in the state. The Commissioner for Information, Abba Dantiye, said the activities of the group, codenamed as WISE, or Women Initiative for Sustainable Empowerment and Equality, were a complete breach of the state's moral standards and a violation of Shari'ah. The Commissioner also said the state government would not accept any agreements promoting the activities of gays and lesbians as it contravened the norms and values of the people of Kano State. The queues for Petrol continued in Abuja and neighboring states on Monday, extending to Lagos and other regions. Motorists endured long waits at the fuel stations dispensing petrol, while black marketers raised prices to between 1,000 and 1,100 naira per litre. Some retail outlets hiked the pump price to 900 naira per litre in Abuja, Nasarawa and Niger State. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited attributed the queues to a recent thunderstorm and logistical challenges disrupting fuel loading jetties. NNPCL assures the public that efforts were on the way to resolve the issue. Billy Gillis Harry, President of Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria, confirmed NNPC's commitment but notes that queues might persist for several more days, particularly in areas far from major depots. And now to education matters. The Nigerian government is investing $2 billion on technology in the country to improve the students' enrollment and equip teachers so as to reduce the number of out-of-school children nationwide. Nigeria's Minister of Communications and Education made this known at an African Educational Technology Conference in Abuja, where they identified a lack of investment on the capacity of teachers as frustrating government's target to improve education in the country. Our correspondent Emmanuel Bagudo tells us more.
The integration of
It's the African Educational Technology Conference 2024, organized by MasterCard Foundation and the Nigerian government, which is key to finding resolutions that will boost the nation's EdTech drive. Nigeria's Minister of Communication says that government hopes to attract more children back to school and improve the capacity of teachers.
A teacher is meant to use technology to teach. Sometimes it takes them 15 to 30 minutes to actually set up and get the technology to work. And perhaps a session is only for 30 or 45 minutes. So most of these teachers are discouraged from actually using the technology. So you see that significant gap. You have the innovation on one hand, which is pushing, finding new ways of investing, but it's disconnected from how technology is truly used in the classroom.
Stakeholders here present also commit to accelerating quality and equitable education for young people through technology via both formal and informal means, saying this will boost job creation.
We also have some of our facilities by some of the agencies in the ministry that will be utilized for this purpose. And the training programs will range from 2 months to 5 months.
The Federal Executive Council actually approved the establishment of a special purpose vehicle, which is now working with about 7 to 8 development finance institutions. And our goal is that over the next 2 to 3 years, we should be able to now deploy 90,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable across the entire continent. If we start to use technology in education, a lot of our young people that are out of school will now have the opportunity to be enlightened, whether they are within school or they go to community centers where they have technology will give them the opportunity, and we'll now start creating more jobs. So to the contrary, for Africa, technology will raise productivity in more of our sectors, which means we'll be creating more jobs. And finally, one thing to take into consideration is that the population on the African continent, 40% of our people are under the age of 15, which means we're very young. Unfortunately for some countries, most of the developed countries, their population is aging and is shrinking. So they actually don't have the workforce to power the future in those countries. So they are looking forward to Africa, and our people cannot help them power their workforce if they're not digitally literate.
Yeah, I'm glad you're mentioning this is an African thing, because a lot of times you see people coming out of the north, coming to Africa, trying to save Africa. And we are saying, let's have an African conversation.
With strategic partnerships in education being discussed and agreed on, it is hoped that this will transform the future of education technology in Africa. In Abuja for News Central, I'm Emmanuel Bagudu.
In the meantime, the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities and the Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions have reaffirmed their intention to proceed with a nationwide protest on Tuesday. The unions are demanding the payment of outstanding salary arrears owed to their members and insist they will not relent until their demands are met. NASU National President Makolo has made this known on Monday. According to him, following the failed meeting on Thursday and having heard nothing from the authorities, members have met in various branches and are ready to protest on Tuesday. Hassan emphasized that despite a warning strike several months ago, the federal government had neglected the union's demands. He explains that the union planned to escalate their demonstrations by taking their grievances to Abuja. Nigeria's National Population Commission has expressed its readiness to conduct a census in September this year. And this was during a press briefing in the nation's capital, Abuja, where the commission says that Nigeria is long overdue for a national census. Our correspondent, Joshua Imarayi, has details.
As Nigeria prepares to join the world in commemorating the World Population Day on July 11th, the chairman of Nigeria's National Population Commission has announced its readiness to conduct a national population and housing census. The chairman of the commission says that this is vital for updating Nigeria's demographic data and ensuring accurate statistics for development, planning and decision-making.
The timing of data collection, where previous census was conducted about 18 years ago, resulting in the use of obsolete information. This could be misleading to policymakers planners, and this misinformation can affect the lives of so many. So it's actually important that we really take immediate steps to conduct census as soon as possible.
Stakeholders at the gathering say the timely conduct of the census is crucial for tracking the progress of the nation and for making policies that will help address Nigeria's diverse population needs.
The UNFPA is also very actively advocating for the census to take place, advocating with various stakeholders. The UNFPA is also working with the donor community so that once the proclamation is made, then we can help the government to mobilize the resources for the census to take place.
Inclusive data is the cornerstone of informed decision-making and policy development. It provides us with the insight needed to understand the realities faced by different segments of our population and empower us to design targeted interventions to address inequalities and disparities.
If we do not do it, Nigeria is going to lose so much.
Yeah.
So that's why we are appealing that government should make sure this happens. If it doesn't happen, we're in trouble.
The chairman of Nigeria's National Population Commission says that the plans have been concluded to conduct a census in November against its earlier scheduled date for the early part of the year. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
We now head to the court where the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, Justice John Soho, has denied the request to transfer 80.2 billion naira fraud trial of ex-Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello from Abuja to Kogi State. In a letter dated July 2nd, Justice Soho agreed with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that the trial should remain in Abuja. Bello's application submitted on June 10th claimed territorial jurisdiction for Kogi State. His lawyer, Adedugba, informed the court of the transfer request on June 27th. EFCC's counsel, Kemi Pinero, opposed the transfer, arguing Bello should have attended his arraignment. Justice Soho explained that the charges involved the conversion and transfer of Kogi State funds to Abuja, justifying the trial's location in Abuja. Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has sworn in Emmanuel Frank Fubara, who was screened and confirmed as commissioner by the Victor Oko Jumbo-led assembly on Monday. The swearing-in ceremony was held at the Executive Council chambers of the Government House in Port Harcourt. Giving his charge after the oath-taking ceremony, Fubara defended his recognition of the Oko Jumbo-led assembly, insisting it is a lawfully recognized legislative arm. He immediately assigned a new commissioner to the Ministry of Finance. According to the governor, though the new commissioner is not an accountant, he had observed him to be dutiful and diligent since they met during his campaign for the governorship election in 2023. And now to security matters. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, has reassured his commitment in ensuring maximum peace is restored on the Plateau. General Musa, who was speaking in Jos when he paid a courtesy call on the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mofwang, maintained that if all hands are on deck, challenges facing the nation will be curbed. Our correspondent Chizoba Anyanwe was there and tells us more.
General Christopher Musa is on the Plateau to share ideas with Governor Caleb Mofwang on more efficient ways of achieving sustainable peace in the state. Ravaged by attacks within a space of over 2 decades, resulting from religious, ethnic, and sociocultural differences, the defense boss is optimistic that with collaboration between the armed forces and the government, more will be achieved in the shortest possible time. With the newly acquired aircrafts, the general believes that pockets of insecurity in the state will soon be contained.
I want to also thank you for the support you are giving to members of the armed forces and other security agencies, without which it will have been difficult to operate. For us, the challenges we are facing are challenges that are surmountable, but we all need to work together as a team. And I think that is what is happening here, and that's what we are doing. And we'll continue to. I want to assure you that we are truly committed in ensuring that there is total peace in the Plateau. nothing will stand in our way. As long as it is possible, we will make it possible. So, sir, you will always count on us. We will always be there for you. We'll go around and see the improvements that we made, especially the recent eyes in the air that we have, which will also help us in conducting our own operations.
According to the governor, despite achievements made so far by the GOC 3 Division and Commander Operation Safe Haven, Major General Abdulsalam Abubakar, and pockets of incidences that abound, he is confident that the support of his administration will improve the situation.
I can say it loudly, without equivocation, that we are better today than where we were last year. And that is kudos to the GOC and his team with other security agencies. I've come to learn that actionable intelligence is very critical in the success of whatever operations that you're undertaking. And it's our duty as government to make sure that we provide the enabling environment for such actionable intelligence to be gathered.
While calling for concerted efforts to consolidate on the successes recorded, the governor and the chief of defense staff believe that synergy among all stakeholders will return Plateau to its enviable place. In Jos for New Central, Chizoba Anyowi.
In line with the celebration of the World Skin Health Day 2024, dermatologists in Nigeria have raised alarm over the lack of access to skin health care and the growing abuse and undiagnosed use of skincare products among the populace. In an exclusive interview with News Central TV, these dermatologists revealed that 200 million Nigerians are only subjected to 200 certified dermatologists across the country, leading to increased skin health burden among other concerns. Our correspondent, Adeshewa Odushoga, has details.
The skincare industry in Africa is growing faster than anyone can think about. From do-it-yourselves videos on YouTube to reels on Instagram and Facebook, the social media space is seeing more skincare awareness every day. The fads and industry surrounding skin bleaching appear to be waning, with niacinamide, retinol, serum, and sunscreen being the most popular options.
Too many cooks spoil the broth, and a lot of people go on social media to try to curate a skincare routine based on what they see on social media and may end up using too many products. And that can lead to, irritation, skin barrier damage, and, they may just end up complicating issues.
Healthy skin is beyond putting on cosmetics, which is what a lot of people think skin is about. It starts actually with good diet, a good and balanced diet. What you put in matters.
While these common trends may suggest a better option for skincare, dermatologists are raising alarm over inadequate access to proper skin health diagnosis.
Dermatological care sometimes can be difficult because some countries have less than one dermatologist per 1 million people in the population. For instance, in Nigeria, we have about 200 dermatologists to 200 million people. So we are one of, such countries. So access to dermatological care sometimes can be difficult for people to be able to get easily.
According to dermatologists, common bath trends in Africa, such as frequent skin exfoliation with net, is considered unsafe for the skin, as it excessively dries out the oil component on the skin surface, making it susceptible to skin diseases.
Absolutely not necessary to use a hard sponge, scratching. Sometimes some people even turn their towels into sponging and then they're doing something very hard. It's not necessary. Simple soaps or synthetic detergents, water, preferably cool to cold water and not hot water, which increases the loss of water from your skin, is what you need. Baby, adults.
World Skin Health Day is a global initiative by the International League of Dermatological Societies and the International Society of Dermatology, and is celebrated on every 8th day in July to educate people about the significance of skin health and encouraging discussion and actions that work towards improving skin health. In Lagos for News Central, Adeshewa Odushoga.
Coming up, Equatorial Guinea ex-minister imprisoned since 2022 freed. We have details shortly. Join us again. Thank you for staying tuned. The news continues in West Africa, where Guinea-Bissau's President Umaru Embalo says the country will elect a new parliament on November 24th, a month after he dissolved it following what he called an attempted coup. This will be the second parliamentary elections in a year and a half in the West African country, which is notoriously unstable, having suffered a series of military or political coups since independence from Portugal in 1974. Embalo, who has been president since 2020, dissolved the opposition-dominated parliament in December 2023 after announcing an attempted coup had taken place. Violence erupted in the capital Bissau between members of the National Guard and Special Forces of the Presidential Guard on the night of November 30th, leaving 2 people dead. And still in West Africa, Equatorial Guinea's former Justice Minister Ruben Mange, imprisoned since August 2022 for calling the oil-rich country's authoritarian leader a demon, has been released following a presidential amnesty. Mange, also a pastor, states that he had to undergo a thorough health check but said he was doing well and had not been tortured in prison. He had been arrested over an audio recording that went viral on WhatsApp for calling the Central African nation's leader, Teodoro Obiang, a demon while calling for a national dialogue. Mange also said he did not receive a lawyer's visit or go on trial and had been in preventive detention. Staying in the region, a Bamako court has sentenced a close ally of Mali's civilian Prime Minister, Choguel Maïga, to a year in prison after he signed a document openly critical of the ruling junta. Boubacar Traoré was detained on May 28th after signing a statement strongly opposing the military's plan to stay in power for several more years. The cybercrime units of the Bamako court sentenced Traoré for undermining the credit of the state, dissemination of false information likely to disturb public peace, and contempt of court. He is the latest public figure to be arrested or sentenced for criticizing the junta that came into power in 2020. In East Africa, Rwanda says it has taken note of the decision by the new Labour government in the United Kingdom to scrap a controversial deal to deport asylum seekers to the East African country. The office of Rwandan government spokesman made this known in a statement on Monday. On Saturday, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the migrant plan forged by the ousted Conservative government was dead and buried. There had already been a spate of legal challenges to the scheme, with the UK Supreme Court in November last year ruling that it was illegal under international law. Outside the African continent, the United States says it does not expect policy changes from Iran after voters elected reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian and downplayed chances to resume dialogue. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is expected to call the shots in Iran, an adversary of the United States since the 1979 Islamic Revolution.
No expectations that this election will lead to a fundamental change in Iran's direction or its policies. At the end of the day, it's not the president that has the ultimate say over the future of Iran's policy. It is the supreme leader. And of course, we have seen the direction that he has chosen to take Iran in. Obviously, if the new president had the authority to make steps to curtail Iran's nuclear program, to stop funding terrorism, to stop destabilizing activities in the region, those would be steps that we would welcome. But needless to say, we don't have any expectation that that's what's likely to ensue.
Zambia's energy regulator has given the green light for the construction of a new coal-fired power plant following a severe drought that has hampered the country's hydroelectric dams, which provides the majority of its energy. The Energy Regulation Board has granted a construction permit of 300 megawatt facility located in the southern parts of the country. Now, this plant will double the capacity of the existing plants at the same time. The project is being led by Mamba Collieries, with majority ownership by Nava, based in Hyderabad, India. Zambia heavily relies on hydroelectric power, accounting for about 85% of its energy supply. However, during droughts like the current El Nino-induced dry spell, water levels drop, causing severe shortages and necessitating daily power cuts of at least 12 hours. Moody's, the credit ratings agency, has further downgraded Kenya's sovereign rating, citing the country's limited ability to implement a fiscal consolidation strategy and manage its growing debt burden. The agency lowered Kenya's local and foreign currency long-term issuer ratings and foreign currency senior unsecured debt ratings from B3 to CAR1. And this downgrade comes after Kenyan President William Ruto withdrew proposed tax increases due to widespread protests that turned violent, resulting in fatalities. The abandoned finance bill aimed to generate an additional $2.7 billion in tax revenue to reduce the budget deficit and borrowing. In response to the scrapped bill, the government has proposed spending cuts instead. Moody's believe that these cuts will gradually narrow the fiscal deficit, but not at the pace previously assumed, leading to prolonged weakness in Kenya's debt affordability. In sports, former Super Eagles striker Amatsone Aluko has taken up a coaching role with Premier League side Ipswich United after calling time on his playing career last season. The 35-year-old registered 7 caps for the Nigerian national team between 2009 and 2015 after switching allegiance from England. He made his debut in the friendly against Ireland under Shuaibu Amodu. He went on to play 6 more games for the Super Eagles, most of which came in the 2014 AFCON qualifiers. His only two goals for the Super Eagles came in the 2-2 draw against South Africa. He enjoyed a long career in British club football, playing for the likes of Birmingham City, Aberdeen, Blackpool Rangers, Hull City, Fulham, Reading and Ipswich. Black Stars forward Antoine Semenyo has extended his stay at FC Bournemouth after signing a contract extension with the Cherries. The Ghana international inked a 5-year deal that will keep him at Vitality Park until summer of 2029. Having joined the Premier League outfit in January 2023, the former Bristol City attacker played a huge role in the club's campaign last season as Bournemouth recorded their best points tally last season. Semenyo scored 8 goals and provided 2 assists in 33 matches in the 2024-25 campaign. Semenyo's brace against Luton Town in March helped the club come back from a 3-goal deficit to secure an important win. He also won Bournemouth's Player of the Month in November last year. Argentina captain Lionel Messi will be fit to play in Tuesday's Copa America semi-final against Canada in New Jersey. Coach Lionel Scaloni said despite the forward's hamstring injury concerns. Messi returned to action on Thursday in Argentina's quarter-final win against Ecuador after missing the final group stage match due to injury. He played the entire game but looked physically hampered. The 37-year-old Inter Miami player missed a penalty in the shootout that decided the game at Houston's NRG Stadium. Argentina and Canada will meet for the second time in the tournament after the opening match in Group A, where the defending champions beat the CONCACAF side 2-0. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Queues persist as price of petrol hits 1,100 naira per litre in Abuja and other cities. Rivers Governor Fubara swears a new commissioner, declares Oko Jumbo-led assembly legitimate. Equatorial Guinea ex-Justice Minister Ruben Mange, imprisoned since 2022, freed. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.